Hello and welcome to another episode of the Expanse Abridged Podcast series. Today we've got chapter 25, which is a Holden chapter from Leviathan Wakes, the first book in the series. So last time we saw Holden and Miller, I suppose really, they were just dealing with the aftermath of the shootout they were in. They were in an ambush and they found Julie Mao. And Julie Mao, she wasn't doing very well. She was covered in spines and growths and tentacles and melded into the wall and had leaked brown goo all over the shower pan. And obviously she was dead. She wasn't doing very well, basically. And it was like some freaky alien shit, and the boys were very distressed. And they kind of walked out of the crime scene, because Miller rang his mate and was like, boys, this is fucked, can you do me a favour? And the police was like, yeah, calm, because there's no law in the belt, there's only policemen. Whatever, there's no law in the belt, there's only cops, whatever it is. But yeah, that's basically it. So we join them now again, and they're just leaving the crime scene. And Holden's like, we were just in a gunfight where we killed at least 3 people, and now we get to leave. How does that work? And Miller's like, professional courtesy. And Holden can't even tell if he's joking. They're kind of walking out of the hotel at the moment, and Naomi can't even press the door button, her hands are shaking so much. She takes a deep breath, clenches her fist, and then puts out a steady hand to press the button. Because Naomi, she gets emotional, but she can control herself. She's cool. And Holden's like, this is bullshit, being an ex-cop doesn't give you a license to get into gunfights. To which Miller sighs. His sigh was heavy and forced. He seemed to shrink a little bit. He said, Sematimber knows the score. Half the job is knowing when to look the other way. Because that's the kind of policeman you get in the belt, in the Expanse. These people that are like jaded, they know there's all this crime, Belter's doing things. And it's all about just getting the worst of them and looking away for the rest. So as they kind of walk out, a dozen cops are in the room. They stare at Miller, and they give him a little nod. They walk on. And Holden's like, let's go get somewhere to talk, and you're paying for it. So they walk off. Naomi pulls Holden a little bit back and says, look, we need to be careful. Miller clearly knew the person in there. Says, no, they're friends or something. He's having trouble dealing with it. So maybe don't push him too hard. We might need him. So it's definitely a bit of emotional awareness from Naomi to recognise, despite Miller's external kind of hard face, not really doing much, that he must have known kind of Julie Mao, because obviously it did really affect him. So he didn't want sympathy from Sematimber. So Miller, because he has to pay, takes him back to his hotel room, which he's already paid for. Naomi goes into Alex goes into the bathroom, turns on the taps, and starts throwing up everywhere. But the taps aren't loud enough, so everyone can still hear him. And they kind of immediately, Amos is pacing around like a caged animal. And then they're going to talk about it. They wait for Alex, because Naomi is cool. Wait for Alex to get back from vomiting everywhere, and they start talking about the problem. Miller wants to know how they know about Julie, because obviously he cares about Julie. He thought we had all the information, and Holden has to admit they didn't know it was Julie, didn't know kind of who it was. They were supposed to pick up a fake person. We just knew it was someone from Scopuli. And Miller says with a frightening intensity in his eyes, how you knew that. And Holden's kind of weighing up, because although Miller has saved their lives by killing the guy who was moving around their side, still doesn't know if he wants to trust him, but also leak all the information he's had from Fred and various people, and kind of his backstory. Because obviously at this point in time, people think he's dead. They think he died on the Donager and stuff. So his kind of general whereabouts and the fact he's moving to Grooven shouldn't really be known. And he kind of explains, he kind of half-asses the answer, that a fictional owner, Scopuli, had checked into a house and made sense to kind of figure that out, rather than knowing like why should you know that, etc. And he's kind of we're not willing to reveal that information, but he explains that the Scopuli was the bait that was used to get the Canterbury. So if the Canterbury was the ship they worked on originally at the start of the story, they found the distress signal from Scopuli, then a ship came in, blew up the Canterbury, and then they blew up the Donager, and that's what they're trying to figure out. And Naomi kind of goes, well, you were looking for Julie, why were you doing that? Miller explains, in typical Miller language as well, it's a parent sent a contractor series looking for her to be sent home. It was my case. They're like, so you do work for series? Not anymore. So what are you doing here? I just hate mysteries. How do you know it was bigger than just a missing girl? Like, why was it a mystery? And he says, they fired me for looking too hard. He says he grinned humorously. And Holden is just trying not to get annoyed at all these non-answers. And they kind of move with the conversation then, having sized up how everybody knows what's going on. They move to the Death Squad, is what they're calling it, the ambush. And then they kind of establish that someone knew they were coming, but they didn't know why, because if they knew why, they could have just gone to the room of Lionel Polanski, like Julie's room, and just kind of, they got the body, got the brown goo or whatever. But they would know, so they knew they were coming but didn't know why. They knew they were going to the right hotel though. And it doesn't make sense to shoot them. Miller explains that apparently that was a mistake. The people kind of overreacted when Amos drew his gun, so they're not well trained. And we go on, it says kind of, they didn't know it was Lionel Polanski, the people aren't well trained, and they didn't see the detective coming, so they aren't omniscient. So the whole thing screams last minute, grab you guys and find out what they're looking for. If they had more time, they could have searched the hotel. Might have only taken 2 or 3 days, says Miller. So it means the people that are looking for them or arrange this ambush have local teams they can distribute around, or at least teams they can deploy. And then they say along the lines of, they didn't seem like locals to me, which I must have missed where they established that beforehand, unless they had like a word accent. But effectively, yeah, they kind of established that whoever's doing this has enough kind of power to have security teams around, but security teams aren't very well organised and are reactive and poorly trained. At this point, Alex comes out of his little coma, because obviously our boy Alex, the only thing he did last chapter was swear a few times about what was going on. And he says, how come no one was talking about the mutant horror show in that room? Was I the only one that saw it? And they kind of move on to that, and even Amos goes a bit quiet and goes, yeah, what the fuck was going on? To which Miller pulls out the little bag. So obviously last chapter he bagged in like a little dog poo bag Julie's phone, which he found below. And Naomi's like, yeah, I could probably hack into it. Because Naomi's basically got the skill in the book of being the hacker that can solve any issue. No questions asked. And she says, I can hack into it, but I'm just not fucking touching it until I know I'm not going to get the brown goo. To which Miller's like, the touchscreen works through the bag, so you can just use it through there. They kind of get into the background about how they knew Julie. Holland's like, how do you know? He's like, when you build a case like this, you look into it, you get a picture. Julie was a good kid. I just wanted to get her back alive. At which point Naomi chimes in that the phone's got a password, which Miller takes and types in Razorback to get in. Which is, I don't know, it's kind of cute, it's kind of corny. Also, I don't know, I kind of like it. I feel like that's actually quite believable what Julie would have used as a password. Razorback being her little ship, her famous ship. It's like a really, really fast one. She did in some races for posh people. We learned, it must have been like 10, 15 chapters ago now. And at this point, how do you know it was Razorback? Miller says, it's a sled, i.e. like a ship. Amos goes, is he talking to us? Because there's no one else here, but I swear half the time I don't know what the fuck he's on about. To which Miller replies, I've been working solo for too long. I've got bad habits. They open the phone. Miller explains that Julie's got a nice case of the autism, so her phone's really well organised. And there's one folder on the homepage which hasn't been filed, which means, oh wow, that must be the interesting one. So they go through it, and they kind of you get this it's like a diary effectively that Julie wrote. She explains that she's on a shuttle. She's kind of found a random shuttle and she has to clear her thoughts. She says, get your shit together. Panic doesn't help. It never helps. Deep breaths. Figure this out. Make the right moves. Fear is the mind killer. Haha, geek. So Julie is not only has got the autism to file the folders away, she's a Dune fan, which is the best kind of autism. Because obviously Dune is one of the best books there as ever written. But she they read through these like ad hoc notes, and she's explained the closest translators to Eros, which is where she needs to go. She's got the Phoebe bug, no way around it, is what she states. And she slept for 3 weeks, didn't even get up to pee. I'm so fucked. Things you need to remember, and she lists down some coordinates. She states, radiation kills. No reactor on this shuttle, but we'll keep the lights off. Keep the E-suit on. Video guy said this thing eats radiation, don't feed it. And then it's about, she's got to set up a flag, people can find her, she's going to stay away from people, don't spread the bug, it's not coughing up the brown goo yet, no idea when that starts. Incognito is my name, Polanski? And you kind of go through the rest of the notes, and she's like, something's happening in my back, lumps all over my kidneys, Darren turned into goo, am I gonna be a suit full of jelly? Sick now, fingers coming out my back and leaking that brown stuff everywhere, have to take the suit off, if you read this, don't let anyone touch the brown stuff, burn me, I'm burning up. And it ends. So the rest of the team kind of sit there and they discuss what this Phoebe bug is she's mentioned. And we had it quite a few chapters ago when the opening moves between the Belt and Mars, the kind of fights, was Phoebe's science station had been hit and there'd been like no survivors left. And that was famously a science station where no Belters were allowed. So they kind of discuss that. They discuss that she's on a shuttle, which she says at the opening start of the notes. But the crew went to the Scopuli, obviously, in like the second or third Holden chapter. And there isn't a shuttle there. They had to take the Knight, I think it was, to there, because there wasn't a shuttle on the Scopuli. So it means she must have gone to another ship. So she's gone to another ship. They're like, but she must have got the Phoebe bug from there, because when they're on Scopuli, it didn't seem too broken or weird. And they're like, what disease does this to these people? It's like, and everyone kind of sat there. It's like, how does he catch the disease? Did that mean it's safe for it? Did they already have it? Julie does describe in the notes it's anaerobic, which means it presumably doesn't go through the air, effectively, because it would die in the oxygen of the air. It's like, where do we go from now? Holden jokes they want to go to Venus, nothing interesting happens on Venus. And he's like, in all seriousness, this has to be a bioweapon. This is his only explanation for kind of what's going on. And Amos is like, even then, there's still holes in that. Like, what the fuck does that have to do with taking down the Canterbury and the Donager? Because obviously there's all these things that have happened so far, and there's no real rationale apart from, like, an escalation of certain things. And they kind of sit there and go, we've got somewhere to go, because Julie left them some coordinates. And Holden kind of surmises if he was a vetting man, the ship she stole the shuttle from, so if she's in that shuttle after the Scopuli, that must be there. And Naomi says, like, every rock in the belt is mapped. You want to hide something, put it in a stable orbit next to an asteroid and go get it later. They're like, okay, cool. So we're going to go find that out and figure out this bioweapon, but we've got something to do in the meantime. And Miller says, if you're going there, I want in. Holden's like, why? No offence, but you found your girl. Your job's over, right? Miller looks at him. His lips a thin line. Different case, Miller said. Now it's about who killed her. And chapter ends. And so it's a nice one there. We've immediately got the team kind of working together. You can see some little frictions between the kind of the Rocinante gang and how Miller operates, because Miller's just been alone and very odd for so long. But then you also get movement, and they're off to kind of go find out the stuff, and you can see they're immediately looking for something to do, and they're going to get off Eros and go find this little asteroid. It's a good little chapter, that, and we'll be on the move, I guess, next time. So I hope you have a lovely week, and I'll see you in a bit.